The flute of mimosa tipped sideways in her hand as Harper turned toward the group and said it, sharp as broken glass. "She's too broke to be here. Honestly, I told her not to come. But you know Casey, she always misses the memo." A few polite chuckles followed. One louder laugh, too eager to please. I stood still at the entrance of her vaulted living room, shoes damp from the light rain outside, coat still clutched in my hands like armor. Harper didn't glance at me. She didn't have to. She knew I heard. "I'm Casey. Casey M's sister to Harper the Radiant, PR queen, the woman who never enters a room without turning it into a stage. And I, apparently, was the understudy who never got the call. The heir in her home, a minimalist. Luxury pad perched above Pacific Heights, felt heavy with curated perfection. Marble counters, dried eucalyptus, expensive silence. I placed the bottle of red I'd brought, something from a private vineyard I co-owned, on the kitchen island. Harper's friend Serena raised an eyebrow at the label but said nothing. She probably assumed it was a clearance item I snagged on my way here. It wasn't the first time I'd been the target of Harper's casual cruelty. But today was different. There was an edge in her tone I hadn't heard in years. Not just superiority, dismissal, finality. Like she'd already written me out of the story and just forgot to tell me. As I quietly walked to the back corner of the room, I noticed Harper's assistant, a waifish girl named Ivy, typing something on her phone near the patio doors. Our eyes met for a second. She smiled faintly as if to say, "Sorry about that," before returning to her screen. I clocked the movement. Ivy hadn't laughed. She hadn't even flinched. That meant she already knew. That meant Harper rehearsed this. Harper always plans her punchlines. 2 years ago, I sold my second analytics startup to a global firm based in Zurich. It made headlines in circles Harper doesn't read. I stayed private, anonymous. I preferred it that way. She never asked, and I never offered. That wasn't neglect, that was precision. My net worth sits somewhere around $307 million. I don't check it daily, I don't wear it, and I certainly don't explain it to people who ask. Retail or admin. Harper's. Living room buzzed with socialites and status hunters, most of whom didn't know my last name. That suited me. I'd rather be underestimated in silence than overestimated in vanity. But this morning, as I accepted a dry mimosa from a server, who looked terrified to stain Harper's antique rug, I began to wonder. Had I let it go too long? Harper's friend group was a rotating cast of curated types. The gallery owner who hates galleries, the crypto bro pretending to be spiritual, and Serena, her oldest, loudest echo chamber. Serena was the one who turned toward me next. "Smile a little too sweet. So, Casey," she began, "you're still doing that, consulting gig, right? Or is it more of a gap year situation now?" I looked her dead in the eye. "Oh, I never stopped. Just shifted my focus." "To what?" she asked, genuinely baffled. "Quiet growth," I said. "Emerging markets, clean tech, strategic silence." She blinked. "Sounds calm." "It is," I replied, "until it's not." I walked past her without waiting for a follow-up, my heart steady, breath even. But inside me something moved, something old. I didn't know whether it was grief or precision sharpening itself again. Back in college, Harper once told a boy I had a crush on that I was technically a virgin but emotionally unavailable. She laughed when I found out, told me it was just a joke, said, "If you let every comment hurt you, you'll never survive in this world." I believed her. That comment stopped me from dating for 3 years. As I watched her now, floating from group to group, dropping names and poses, like business cards, I felt no hatred, only calculation. In the corner, I caught a woman watching me, tall, no makeup, holding a glass of still water, not wine. She hadn't laughed either. When I looked back, She didn't glance away, just raised a brow as if asking, "Are you done letting them write your story yet?" I would learn later that her name was Jenna. But in that moment, I didn't know her. I only knew the look. It was the look I gave myself every morning in the mirror. The one that says, they don't know what's coming, and you don't owe them the warning. I stayed for another hour, just long enough to observe. At one point, Harper brushed past me and whispered under her breath, "You're not going to sulk all day, right?" I replied with a calm that made her flinch. "I don't sulk, I study." Later, in the guest room, Harper offered me a white robe, clearly unused with the tag still intact. "This one's better than what you brought," she said with a bright smile. I accepted it, but not because it was kind, because I knew it wasn't. She wasn't offering comfort. She was staging my humiliation. She wanted me to wrap myself in her definition of dignity, as if mine wasn't enough. That robe, still creased from its packaging, was her way of saying, "Here, try being me." I wore it. All night. Not out of submission, but out of spite. Because I knew she'd ask me in the morning if I liked it. And I planned to look her in the eye and say, it fit better than expected, just like this role. At 2:13 a.m., I logged into a secure dashboard on my laptop. The renewable energy fund I seeded 2 years ago had just crossed a valuation threshold. An alert blinked, projected. Return $12.4 million by end of quarter. I didn't smile. I didn't even nod. I just closed the laptop and whispered into the dark, "You want war in pastels, Harper? Fine." And that was the moment I decided. No more protecting her from my silence. Let them think I'm the quiet one. Let them find out. What quiet can buy? She was always the one who got photographed first. That was the earliest distinction I remember between us. Not beauty, not charm, not even confidence. It was attention. Harper attracted it like gravity. I absorbed the silence. It left behind. We were kids then, 7 and 9. I watched her take center stage in every family gathering, recital, or photo session. I was the kid who held her coat, the one who edited the school paper no one read, the one who won math competitions only the principal noticed. Harper won tiaras. I won quiet. And from then on, that became the way things were drawn. Growing up in the same house, breathing the same air, and somehow existing in completely different worlds, I learned to stop trying to compete with her. You don't outrun a hurricane, you build underground. That's what I did. And while she posted selfies under spotlight chandeliers, I buried every move beneath layers of code, strategy, and legally binding silence. But the story she built of me, that I was the shadow she left behind, wasn't just hers. It became the family's narrative. Her wins were celebrated. My restraint was misread as lack. She once told a cousin at a family barbecue, "Casey's the smart one, but she's so practical it's depressing." Everyone laughed. I smiled. That was 12 years ago. And somehow the line still echoes. But that Easter weekend, something cracked open. Not because of what she said in front of her brunch guests, but because of what it confirmed. She didn't just misunderstand me. She needed me to be small. The scaffolding of her ego relied on my invisibility. That night, as I stood in the guest bathroom of her luxury townhome, I examined the skincare shelf she had laid out for guests. Everything in travel sizes, arranged like a magazine flat lay. A tiny folded note with instructions. "Please don't open the serum. It's a sample for a client shoot." Even generosity had PR in her world. I opened it, just to see if she'd notice. I didn't touch a drop. When I returned to the guest room, I found an extra blanket had been placed on the bed. At first, I thought it was thoughtful. Then I noticed the fabric. A wool blend throw I'd given her for Christmas 5 years ago. Still in the gift box, untouched, re-gifted back to me in the subtlest insult possible. A soft, folded slap. That's when I knew she had rehearsed everything. The wine I brought, her eye roll at the brand, wasn't spontaneous. The robe still in plastic wrap, the too loud joke in front of Serena. She had written this script for me before I arrived, and she didn't even need me to play the role well. She just needed me to stay quiet and grateful, like always. I sat on the bed. I didn't cry. But I did let the memory come back. The one from the year I turned 23, when she convinced our parents not to let me move back in after a layoff. She'd told them it was better for Casey to stand on her own. At the time, I thought it was tough love. Now I see it for what it was. She knew even then. A cornered Casey recalibrates. That year, I taught myself the fundamentals of options trading. Took $8,000 and doubled it in under 5 months. By the following year, I was managing 6 accounts and forming the shell of what would become my first startup. I've never thanked her for that exile, but maybe I should, because it gave me something she never meant to, independence sharpened by abandonment. In the hallway outside the guest room, I heard her voice again, hushed this time, but not enough. She'll leave early tomorrow. She always does. She hates real crowds. The voice that answered wasn't Serena's. It was Ivy's. Soft and maybe unsure. She seems calm, though. Harper laughed, but not kindly. That's the thing with people like her. They're quiet until they want something. Then suddenly you're supposed to feel guilty for ignoring them. That was the moment I realized. Harper didn't just pity me. She feared me. In a way she couldn't name. It wasn't that I was a failure. It was that I refused to let her measure me. And people like Harper can't handle metrics they don't control. I made no sound, just retreated into the room and closed the door. At 1:47 a.m., I sent a message to a private group chat, one I hadn't used in over a year. The recipients, my legal team, my broker, and one person I hadn't spoken to since I signed the final contract with QuantEdge. Subject line, potential exposure scenario, discretion maintenance. I wasn't scared, just prepared. What I didn't anticipate came 2 minutes later, a reply. Not from legal, not from finance. It was from Arya Cho, the private equity strategist I'd once mentored quietly from afar. Her message. Did you know Harper's PR firm just pitched a feature on invisible wealth and fake minimalists to StyleNet? Your name is not in it, but the template is familiar. I stared at the message for a long time, so this wasn't just brunch humiliation. This was strategy. This was Harper trying to own the narrative before someone else uncovered it. She didn't know specifics, but she knew enough to sense the iceberg under my silence. And she was trying to turn the ship early. I closed the laptop. My fingers shook, not from fear, from something colder, the kind of alertness that descends before a surgical strike. She was going to try to define me before the truth caught up, before Jenna, or someone else, asked the right question, and in her world, whoever speaks first wins. But Harper forgot something. I don't speak first. I move first. I folded the robe carefully, wrote a note, placed it on top. Fits well? Thanks for the regift. And I set a reminder for 9 a.m., not for brunch. For a timed release on a professional newsletter I rarely used, followed by a strategic profile push to a closed circle of investor media via proxy accounts. She wanted an audience. Now she'll get one, but it won't be for her. Morning came with the smell of citrus and ambition. I heard Harper downstairs before I even opened my eyes, her voice crisp, clipped, controlling. No, the lilies go to the left, not center. It's asymmetry that makes it feel effortless. She was orchestrating the illusion. I stayed, upstairs longer than necessary, standing by the guest room window in silence. From here, I could see her backyard, the white tent already up, 3 servers unloading trays of pastries. She hadn't asked if I wanted coffee. That, in her world, was a courtesy reserved for people who mattered, or people who posted about it later. I took my time, pulled my hair into a low twist, dressed in the same charcoal dress I'd worn to a benefit in Zurich last fall. Understated, perfectly tailored, unbranded, the kind of wealth that doesn't need to explain itself. As I adjusted the simple silver cuff on my wrist, I caught my own reflection in the mirror and saw what Harper never had. Control. Not the kind you shout about, the kind you weaponize without raising your voice. Downstairs, Harper glanced at me briefly when I entered the kitchen. "Oh, you look clean. Nice," she said, sipping her green juice. Clean. Not elegant, not radiant, clean. "I'll stay out of your way," I replied. She didn't hear the blade under the calm. "No need. Just don't talk numbers. This crowd doesn't vibe with spreadsheets," she said it as a joke, but her eyes weren't smiling. I nodded once, filing it away. That line wasn't for her guests. It was for me. A reminder that even here, in a house where I was blood, I was still a potential liability to her aesthetic. I drifted to the garden, watching the staff finish the final touches. A woman with a clipboard was directing the placement of individual rose petals on each table setting. Excess disguised as sophistication. That was when the first guest arrived. Serena. She wore a silk jumpsuit too tight for sitting and a gold cuff that looked like it cost more than most people's rent. Her air kiss missed Harper's cheek by a fraction, which I suspect was deliberate. "Brunch perfection," she said. "Who's the caterer?" Harper smiled wide. "Private referral. Can't share. NDAs." Serena's eyes found me. "Casey, right? You're Harper's cousin?" I paused. "Sister." "Oh." A beat. "Right. Sorry, I just never see you." Tagged. "Harper prefers her grid minimal," I replied evenly. The comment landed. Harper's smile twitched. The guests came in waves, women with blowouts and men with shoes that gleamed too much. Everyone had something to prove, and too much. Time to do it. I listened, watched, absorbed the cadence of money masquerading as meaning. Then Jenna arrived. She wasn't like the others. No forced smiles, no perfume trail. She wore a navy linen dress and no jewelry, carried a worn leather notebook instead of a clutch. She introduced herself to Harper with a brief nod, then turned to me. "You're Casey," she said, not asked. I nodded. "What do you do?" "I work in analytics." She tilted her head. "That covers a lot of ground." "It does." She smiled, not backing down. "Data or capital?" That was the moment. The room blurred around us. Jenna had asked the one question no one else had the insight or nerve to ask, and she had done it without pretense. "Depends on the day," I said. "Sometimes both." She didn't press, just raised one brow. "Interesting," and walked away. Harper, who had been eavesdropping in plain sight, quickly inserted herself beside me. Jenna's harmless, a little intense, kind of obsessed with spotting hidden patterns. It's her party trick. I said nothing, because Harper had just told me 2 things. 1, she didn't understand Jenna. 2, she feared what Jenna might uncover, and I now knew Harper hadn't invited her. She hadn't anticipated her. A new player had entered the board. Halfway through brunch, Harper stood to give a toast. To friends, to freedom, and to having the kind of life you don't need to escape from. Laughter. Glasses raised. Cameras angled for flattering candids. I watched Harper soak it in, glowing under the weight of her own curation. But then something slipped. A server, barely 20, spilled a splash of champagne onto Harper's Balmain hem. Barely a drop, barely visible. She turned and snapped. Not loud, but lethal. "Are you blind? This fabric doesn't come with a second chance." The boy turned pale. Serena laughed, trying to ease the tension. Harper waved him off. But Jenna saw it. I watched her watching. A small scribble in her notebook. Harper didn't notice, but I did. Back inside, as guests took turns praising the soufflé, Harper pulled me aside near the hallway to the powder room. "I just got a message from Mom," she said casually. "She wants us to take a photo together, for the family group. Chat? Can you just, smile?" "Of course." We posed in front of the fireplace. Harper angled her body to block my shoulder slightly. It would crop well for Instagram. When she sent the photo, I watched her type the caption. "Brunching with my baby sis. She's still as mysterious as ever." Still. As if I had always been the same. As if she hadn't spent a decade scripting me into a supporting character. And ciao. Hour later, after dessert but before the espresso round, I stepped outside. Jenna followed. Not by accident, she didn't speak for a moment. Just stood beside me under the pergola. "You've built something," she said, eyes still on the horizon. I didn't respond. She turned to face me. "But you've hidden it." "Well, except from people who know where to look." "What do you think you're seeing?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "The eye of a storm." Then she walked away, and I stood there, the weight of her words settling slowly into my chest. Because she was right. Harper had spent years throwing wind and light and sound, but I had become the eye, still, cold, and entirely unshakable. What Harper didn't realize is that storms don't start loud. They start with pressure, and pressure is what I do best. The scent of overripe figs and sandalwood candles hung in the air like expectation. Harper stood at the center of her curated world, surrounded by polished surfaces and people who reflected them back. Everything gleamed, everything matched. Even the playlist seemed engineered to swell at just the right moment, as if her life had a score composed in advance. Easter brunch had officially begun. I kept to the edge of the gathering like a shadow that refused to fade. One hand around a champagne flute I hadn't sipped, the other resting lightly at my side. I moved with deliberate softness, unseen but not unaware. Harper, meanwhile, was in full performance mode, kissing cheeks she didn't care for, laughing half a beat too late, adjusting the placement of cutlery like it might shift the orbit of the room. "Casey, you remember Serena, right?" she said as I approached the table to help with a stack of linen napkins. I didn't answer. Because I remembered exactly who Serena was. Harper's mouthpiece when she wanted plausible deniability. The same woman who, 3 years ago, told a mutual acquaintance I was emotionally constipated and financially dependent, before pretending she'd mixed me up with someone else. Serena turned, drink in hand. "Casey, still working that boutique finance thing?" she asked, her voice coated in sugar and steel. "Something like that," I replied. "Must be hard," she added, eyes scanning my dress. "Being low profile in a high expectation world." I smiled without teeth. "Luckily, I set my own expectations." A beat. Then a chuckle, as if I'd told a clever joke. Serena clinked her glass against mine, already turning away. Harper caught the exchange. Her expression didn't change, but something shifted in her posture. A flicker of unease. The way someone checks the sky after assuming it's going to stay sunny. The garden was almost full now. Guests were scattered in clusters, laughing, snapping photos, sharing stories none of them truly listened to. And that was when Jenna arrived. She wasn't late. She was timed. No one saw it that way, but I did. She moved through the crowd with a stillness that repelled superficial energy. Wore a slate gray shirt dress, sleeves rolled, no accessories. Just a notepad in her hand and a sense of self that didn't need defense. When Harper greeted her, it was with more restraint than she gave anyone else. "Jenna," finally. "I wasn't sure you'd come." Jenna didn't apologize, just looked around. "You do love your layers." Harper laughed tightly. It's about creating experience. For whom? Jenna asked, eyes already moving past her. And then, those eyes landed on me. We didn't speak right away. We didn't need to. She crossed to where I stood, poured herself a drink, and said, "You're the one who doesn't belong here." It wasn't an insult. It was observation. I nodded. I never have. Yet here you are. I looked over my glass. So are you, she smiled. I'm paid to notice things. What's your excuse? I didn't answer, but the silence between us felt mutual, understood. And when she finally walked away, I saw Serena lean toward Harper, whisper something. Harper glanced over at me, then at Jenna, and her smile broke for the first time all day. Later, as the catered platters were swapped for dessert boards and Harper began her usual posturing speech, something about gratitude, family, and legacy, I stepped out to the patio, escaping the artificial warmth. Ivy, her assistant, was by the kitchen arch, quietly organizing silverware. She wasn't part of the show, which meant she was paying attention. I waited until no one was looking and asked, "Did Harper coach the seating chart?" She blinked, unsure if she was supposed to answer. "Because it's interesting," I continued, "that I ended up at the end of the table between a crypto enthusiast who doesn't understand compounding interest and a travel influencer who thought Paraguay was in Africa." Ivy bit the inside of her cheek, almost smiled. She wanted balance. "She got insulation," I corrected, and Ivy, after a pause, said the first honest thing anyone in that house had dared to say to me all. "But she doesn't know who you are." No theatrics, no pity, just truth. I left her with that. Back inside, Harper was in her element again, holding court over a discussion about influencer marketing and conscious consumerism. Jenna was seated nearby, listening but not engaged. I slipped into my chair just in time to hear Harper say, "Casey's always been the minimalist of the family. She once told me she likes living under the radar. I think it's kind of noble. Or maybe just low pressure." Another laugh. And there it was. A compliment that sounded like a kindness, but landed like a brand. Noble. Low pressure. Conveniently. Small. I didn't interrupt. I let the narrative hold. That was the move. Because when people invest in a version of you they invented, they don't notice when the real you starts pulling strings. Harper was monologuing now about her recent project. With a green beauty brand, something about aligning with integrity. I studied her face, the rhythm of her performance, the slight shift in her voice when she sensed Jenna was watching. Jenna leaned forward then and asked a question that cracked the room open. "What's your definition of legacy?" Harper blinked. "Sorry? Legacy," Jenna repeated. "You talk about it a lot. What does it actually mean to you?" Harper's mouth opened, closed. For once, she didn't have a rehearsed answer. I stood, placing my napkin down softly. Walked toward the kitchen as if I'd simply forgotten something. But not before I saw Jenna's gaze follow me. Curious, measured. Like she'd just flipped to the final chapter and realized the story wasn't what she thought it was. I went upstairs, locked the guest room door, and pulled out my phone. Opened the encrypted folder. Inside were drafts, articles, press kits, profiles I'd declined for years. There was one in particular, commissioned quietly by a wealth management firm looking to showcase hidden capital behind high-impact philanthropy. The draft was tight, anonymous, powerful. One image, blurred. The only note they'd added, "Let us know if you ever want this published." For the first time, I didn't delete it. I just forwarded it to one person, Jenna. No message, just the file. And when I returned to the party, the violinist had resumed playing. Serena was drunk on imported rosé, and Harper was too busy managing optics to notice the storm gathering 2 feet from her curated life. She had built a world of polished surfaces, but I built mine underground, and the ground was starting to shift. The sun had already begun to drop lower behind the ridgeline when I received the email. Subject line: Thought. You'd want to see this. No body text. Just a link. It came from an old contact at Helion Advisory, a boutique finance intelligence group that specialized in tracking high-value players for hedge funds and high-net-worth clients. Discreet, elite, and mostly invisible unless you knew where to look. I clicked the link without hesitation. It led to an article buried 2 layers deep on a mid-tier industry site. The headline read, "The quiet force behind 300 mounters in undisclosed capital, inside the world of the silent architect." No name in the headline, no keywords. But the photograph was unmistakable. Me, accepting a plaque from the Green Horizons Foundation, at a private gala nearly 4 years ago. My face slightly turned, caught in profile, wearing the same muted expression I've always carried in public. I scrolled faster. The story was detailed, sourced anonymously, and clearly written by someone who'd done their homework without my permission. It mentioned several of my shell companies, the holding structure I'd built across Luxembourg and Singapore, and even hinted at my involvement in the initial funding round for Veritas Neural Systems, information not public in any database. I hadn't scrubbed clean myself. I read it twice, then once more. Whoever had leaked this hadn't just exposed my finances. They'd dismantled the architecture of my anonymity with surgical precision. I didn't panic. That reflex had been burned out of me years ago. Instead, I opened another tab and sent a single encrypted message to my internal comms council. Find the leak, and find out who benefits from this narrative reaching Harper's world. Because the exposure wasn't accidental. The timing was too perfect, too poetic. Brunch had been 4 days ago. Harper's world still hummed with the buzz of curated selfies and polite snubs. But now this piece would slip like a toxin into her feed, passed from hand to hand by the very people she tried to impress. Someone wanted to burn the mask, mine or hers. The next notification wasn't digital. It was a call, unknown number. Local. Area code. I answered. Casey. Harper's voice was raw. No preamble. No greeting. I waited. You never said anything, she hissed. You let me sit there, laughing at you, while the entire table thought you were some finance intern. I said nothing. Her breath caught. Then she spat out. Was it fun? Watching me humiliate myself in front of my friends? I finally spoke. You weren't the one being humiliated. You should have told me. I tried. You just assumed. The version of me you could dismiss was the only version that existed. A pause. I imagined her pacing in her pristine kitchen, pulling at a strand of hair, trying to script the rest of the conversation in her head. But real life didn't work like her brand stories. Serena sent me the article, she said. Jenna forwarded it to her. Did you give it to Jenna? No. But you gave her something. I didn't answer. I don't understand you, Casey. Who does that? Who builds a fortune and then hides it like it's some shameful thing? I didn't hide it. I just didn't sell it. But you let me look like a fool. No, I corrected. You did that part on your own. She hung up. No goodbye. I stared at the black screen for a long time, feeling nothing and everything at once. Not rage, not sadness. Something closer to confirmation. The game had shifted. Ivy, her assistant, called me 15 minutes later. She spoke in a whisper. I think you should know. Harper's spiraling. She's calling everyone who was at brunch, trying to find out who knew. She won't find the answer there, I said, because it wasn't anyone at brunch. Silence. Then who? That's not the right question. What is? I looked out the window at the dusk settling over my quiet street, my unremarkable building, the facade that had protected me until now. The question is why someone wanted Harper to know. There was something about the article that didn't sit right. Not just the timing or the depth. It was the tone. Sympathetic, respectful, almost reverent. Like the writer wanted me seen, not just exposed, and I knew only one person from that brunch who had both the access and the motive to do that. Jenna. Not for Harper, not for gossip, but for me. Because I'd given her the draft. I hadn't told her to publish it. I hadn't even written a message. But I'd placed it in her hands like a loaded gun and walked away. And she'd pulled the trigger. Not out of spite, out of precision. Jenna didn't do chaos. She did consequence. And this was her way of restoring balance. That night, I received a second message. This one from an anonymous sender via a burner domain. It contained a link to Harper's upcoming feature pitch to StyleNet. The title, Curating Realness, How to Stay Grounded When You're Surrounded by Success. Attached was a draft of her pitch email, where she described growing up with a brilliant but low-income sister who taught me the value of humility, a fabricated backstory, a weaponized version of me. She hadn't just tried to erase me, she'd tried to use me. And Jenna had intercepted it. Now I understood everything. The brunch, the questions, the timing. Jenna hadn't been attending. She'd been auditing. I sat back, closed my laptop, and let the silence settle around me like armor. Let Harper scramble. Let Serena fumble for context. Let their world twist under the weight of a truth they could neither monetize nor contain. I would not call Jenna. I didn't need to. She had done what needed to be done, and Harper had finally been forced to look at the one thing she spent her life avoiding, the version of me that didn't need her spotlight to burn. The first photo hit Instagram just after noon, a simple carousel from Serena. Sundays in the hills, grateful for clarity, connections, and conversations that challenge. The first slide was a shot of her Aperol spritz. The second, a blurred group photo taken at Harper's brunch. The third, subtle, almost buried, was the now circulating article with my name in the byline Jenna had ghostwritten for me. No tag, no mention. Just a quote highlighted in coral pink overlay. The loudest person in the room is rarely the one in control. Harper saw it within 3 minutes. I know because she called in 4. Why are people messaging me asking? If I knew? Knew what? You know what? I kept my voice even. Maybe you should ask them. Don't do this, she snapped. This is not how family works. I almost laughed, but I didn't. I listened to the silence after her words, sharp, strained. That was her unraveling. Serena had outmaneuvered her. Whether intentionally or not, she'd broadcast the one thing Harper had tried hardest to contain, that she'd been blindsided in her own arena. But what Harper hadn't realized yet was that Serena had motives she never noticed. I hadn't realized it either, until now, because the quote Serena had pulled? That wasn't in the published article. It was from the draft, the one I'd only shared with Jenna, which meant Jenna had shared it with someone else. Or Serena had access to someone I hadn't accounted for. I called Ivy. She picked up on the first ring. She's spiraling, she said before I could speak. I need to know who's really in the room with her and who put Serena in motion. There was a pause. Then Ivy exhaled. I shouldn't be telling you this, but Serena and Harper, they're not what they used to be. Serena's been trying to push Harper out of a brand deal. Something about equity conflict. Harper doesn't know. So Serena wasn't just a passive audience. She'd weaponized the brunch. I ended the call and sat still. Across the room, my laptop blinked with new notifications. LinkedIn requests, media inquiries, quiet messages from people who once ignored me. The article hadn't gone viral, but it had gone surgical. It had landed exactly where it was meant to. And the damage was precise. By mid-afternoon, Harper had locked her social accounts. People were asking the wrong questions. Not, who is Casey? But why didn't Harper know? I received a call from my father, unsure and unprepared. We saw something online, he said carefully. Something about you. Money. It's true, I said. Silence. You never told us. You never asked. He hesitated. Your mother's worried. She doesn't need to be. But why the secrecy, Casey? I almost answered. Almost laid it all bare. The years of being minimized, the dismissal packaged as concern, the family dinners where Harper's dress was discussed longer than my career. But instead I said, it's easier to grow something when no one's watching. He didn't understand. He didn't need to. That night, I knew Harper would try something. She always did. She couldn't sit in loss. She had to spin it, and she did. At 10:42 p.m., she posted a story, a black background, white text. Family isn't about perfection. It's about love. Even when it hurts. No names. No images. Just implication. Just enough to bait sympathy without accountability. What she didn't expect was Jenna's response. Posted 10 minutes. Later. A photo of a chessboard. One move from checkmate. Captioned. Some queens don't need the crown. They hold the board. It spread faster than hers. Serena shared it. Then 2 others. Then it hit a niche financial gossip account that had already pieced the puzzle together. Harper was no longer controlling the conversation. She was the conversation. And all she had left were rebuttals no one was asking for. That night, I sent one message to Jenna. No subject, no signature, just a sentence. Thank you for not pulling the punch. She didn't reply. She didn't need to. Because I understood now. Harper had made the first move when she called me too broke. She thought it was a declaration of status. She didn't realize it was the opening of a game she couldn't win, because when you spend your life on stage, you forget what the lights blind you from. And I had never left the shadows, until I decided to burn them behind me. She invited me to dinner 2 days after the silence turned from cold to humiliating. No grand apology. Just a short text, lowercase. Can we talk? Over food, maybe. I chose the place. A quiet bistro in Hayes Valley that didn't allow photography and didn't take reservations. It wasn't Harper's scene, which made it perfect. I arrived first, sat in the corner booth, and watched the door. She came in wearing black, rare for her. No jewelry, no designer labels screaming for validation. It was a calculated vulnerability. Costume or confession, I couldn't tell. She slid into the seat across from me. No hug, just eye contact and a long exhale. I don't even know where to start. That's a first. She flinched, just slightly. I deserve that, she said. I didn't reply. The server brought water. We ordered quietly. For the first 10 minutes, we talked about nothing. The weather, traffic, a new building near her agency. Then she stared down into her glass like it held the words she couldn't shape. I always thought I knew how people worked, she finally said. I've made a whole career out of predicting how someone wants to be seen and showing them how to do it. But I didn't see you coming. You never tried. Her jaw tightened. I did, at first, when we were younger. But you never needed me the way I needed to be needed. There it was. The first truth. She looked up. I thought you were punishing me. All these years. But you were just being. I watched her, unmoving. This wasn't guilt. It was exposure. She wasn't ashamed of how she treated me. She was ashamed that she miscalculated me. And in Harper's world, miscalculation is betrayal. I want to understand, she said. But I don't even know what I'm trying to understand. I leaned back, folding my hands in my lap. You're not trying to understand me, I said. You're trying to recover control. That stopped her. She blinked, as if those words burned going in. That's not fair. It's not untrue. She swallowed hard. The pause that followed wasn't just silence. It was resistance breaking. She was losing the rhythm she used to dominate every conversation. The script was useless now, and she knew it. "Do you think I'm shallow?" she asked. Quietly. "No, I think you're terrified of being irrelevant." Her breath caught. I saw something flicker in her eyes. Not tears, but something sharper. Recognition. "Everything I built," she said slowly, "was about staying visible, staying in the loop. I thought that was power. And now?" She shook her head. "Now, I'm not sure it was anything at all." A moment passed between us, jagged and clean. For the first time, I saw Harper not as the girl who won the spotlight, but as the woman still afraid to step out of it, because she wasn't sure who she was without it. "I don't know how to come back from this," she said. "I'm not asking you to." Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. "Then why are you here?" I didn't hesitate. "To see what you do without an audience." She looked away, but not before I saw it. Grief. Not for me. For the version of herself she couldn't maintain anymore. "I read the article," she said. "The real one. Not the one Serena quoted. The full piece. You said you never needed recognition." I met her gaze. "I needed peace more." "Did you hate me?" "No. I observed you." She winced. "That might be worse." "No," I said. "It was safer." We finished dinner mostly in silence. As we stood to leave, she hesitated. Then, carefully, she said, "Would you ever teach me?" "Teach you what?" She looked down, then back up. "How to live like that. Quiet but strong. Untouched." I studied her for a long moment. This wasn't a request for redemption. It was a request for strategy, for something more valuable than forgiveness. Recalibration. "Maybe," I said. "But not if you're looking for an image." "I'm not," she said too quickly. "I'll know if you are." She nodded once. "You always did." We stepped into the street. Wind rising from the bay swept her hair across her face. For the first time, she didn't fix it immediately. We didn't hug. We didn't say, "See you soon." But as she turned the corner, I realized something strange. She wasn't performing anymore. And maybe, just maybe, that was her first real move. Under the fluorescent calm of the Four Seasons private conference wing, the room was filled with men in pressed Italian suits and women in understated billion-dollar neutrality. Name tags weren't necessary. Everyone here already knew who mattered. And they knew me now. I arrived without announcement, escorted through a side entrance by a security consultant named Mira, a former Mossad handler turned investor protection strategist. I trusted her because she didn't speak unless the stakes were 6 figures or higher. And when I showed her Harper's newest pitch deck, she simply said, "Let's get you in the room before your name ends up on someone else's." Harper didn't know I'd be attending the West Coast Capital Summit. She also didn't know that the guest list included 2 people she'd desperately tried to court just months ago and failed. They'd passed without explanation. The reason? Me. Quiet veto. Never confirmed, never denied. She hadn't even known I was there in the shadows, until now. When I entered the lounge outside the executive panel, Harper was mid-conversation with a woman in emerald heels and a surname that appeared on buildings. I watched the flicker in her eyes, recognition, then recalibration. She smiled. Plastic, polite, war-ready, Casey. Her voice had the same crispness she used when presenting to brands she secretly despised. "I didn't know you were attending." "I wasn't planning to," I replied, removing my coat. But then again, I wasn't planning to be a bullet point in your latest investor brief either. Her expression didn't shift, but her shoulders did. Barely. Enough for Mira, standing 5 feet away, to step closer. Harper noticed. "You brought someone?" she asked. I smiled. "So did you. She just sold your entire influencer funnel to 2 of your competitors." Harper blinked. "What are you talking about?" Serena, I said simply. You thought she was helping you build your next platform. She was just copying your data pipeline while you performed for her. It hit her like frost. Not the betrayal, but the realization that everyone else might already know. You have no proof, she said, voice tightening. I stepped closer, lowered my voice. I don't need proof. I have perception. And in this room, perception is liquidity. Her eyes flicked toward Mira. Who is she? My firewall. A small silence wrapped around us. The panel was about to begin. I turned to go. Why are you doing this? She asked sharply. You already won. I stopped. No, I said. I haven't even started. And then I entered the panel room and took my seat. 2 rows behind the founder of the analytics firm Harper was trying to get funding from. He nodded at me. I nodded back. Unspoken. Acknowledgement. Harper was now seated in the last row. Not part of the table. Not even part of the conversation. Later, during the reception, a quiet figure approached me. Jenna. I saw the panel, she said. You didn't speak? I didn't need to. She paused. She's unraveling. I nodded once. I think she's trying to pitch again tonight. Something big. I know. You're not stopping her? I met Jenna's gaze. She's walking into her own collapse. There's nothing more strategic than silence at the moment someone else starts to scream. Then Jenna did something I didn't expect. She handed me a small black envelope. What's this? An invitation. Closed circle. Zurich. Winter. I opened it briefly. A name. A time. A promise. The kind of room people paid millions just to get a whisper of. She thinks you're still reacting, Jenna said. But you're not. You're 4 rooms ahead. I didn't deny it. As I left the conference that night, Harper was already on a video call near the valet, trying to salvage her meeting with someone who had just spent the last hour listening to me in absolute silence. Her pitch deck was still open on her iPad. Mira had already encrypted it the moment she'd connected to the hotel Wi-Fi. Its contents had been scrambled into gibberish. Harper didn't know yet, but she would, soon. The next phase had begun. Not revenge. Correction. The restaurant was near empty, the kind of place that didn't rely on foot traffic or social media buzz. It lived on reputation. Quiet, generational, immune to trends. I picked it for a reason. I didn't want performance. I wanted truth. Harper arrived 10 minutes late. Not fashionably. Just delayed. Like she'd run out of choreography and was now trying to remember how to walk without music. She wore a coat that still tried too hard, but her eyes no longer did. I didn't think you'd actually come, she said as she sat down. I didn't think you'd ask, I answered. She nodded. No rebuttal, no retort. She wasn't here to win. For the first 5 minutes, we didn't talk. The silence wasn't tense. It was earned. The kind that forms between 2 people who've stopped pretending. She finally spoke. You changed the air in every room and I didn't even know. No, I said. I didn't change the air. I just stopped breathing the one you controlled. She lowered her gaze. I deserve that. Maybe. But it's not about punishment. Anymore. Then what is it about? Closure. She blinked. I thought that's what the summit was. No, I said. That was the mirror. She sat back. Her voice softened. You let me fall. I let you see where you were standing. Another silence. This time heavier. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. Not flashy. No gold embossing. Just a thin black spine and clean white paper. I shut down the platform. The one I tried to build off your story. The investors backed out anyway. But I didn't fight it. I took the folder. Inside were notes. Handwritten. Personal. apologies, reflections. Some of them dated back months before the brunch. Before the storm, I looked up. You were already unraveling. I was already tired of the act, she whispered. You just made me see how hollow it had become. The food came. Neither of us touched it. It wasn't that kind of dinner. She looked around the restaurant. I've spent so much of my life trying to matter in places I didn't belong. I never realized I already mattered, just not in the way I wanted. That's how they get you, I said. The world tells you to be visible, but they never tell you that the loudest ones usually vanish first. She smiled, small, real. You were never loud. I was never lost. She hesitated, then said, So what happens now? I leaned forward, met her eyes. We don't rewrite the past. We stop repeating it. And you forgive me? I don't need to. I just see you now. Her eyes glistened, but no tears fell. Harper didn't cry publicly. Even in collapse, she held a pose. But tonight it wasn't armor. It was restraint. And for the first time, I respected that. We left separately. No dramatic goodbye. Just a nod. A knowing. In the cab ride home, I looked out at the lights stretching across the bay like threads of stories, tangled but still connected. This is the story I've lived. And if you've followed me this far, let me leave you with this. Sometimes, the people who mock you, who reduce you to labels, who laugh at your simplicity, aren't doing it because they truly believe you're beneath them. They're doing it because they're terrified you've already found something they've spent their whole life faking. Power isn't always loud. Revenge doesn't need an audience. And silence, it's not weakness, it's design. If you've ever been dismissed, overlooked, written off because you didn't play the game, know this. The game was always optional. Dignity isn't. And real strength, real, lasting strength, isn't. About showing them, it's about knowing you never had to. Don't chase applause. Build silence that roars. And when they finally hear it, make sure it's too late to rewrite your name. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If it moved you, made you, reflect, or simply reminded you of your own quiet power, subscribe to this channel. It's how we keep sharing stories that matter. And trust me, what's coming next is just the beginning.